With Marvel Spider-Man 3, the final chapter obviously most likely being the conclusion to the story, and Insomniac wanting to include Venom in future projects because they said they were open to it, I wanted to talk about why all the hate on Venom in Marvel Spider-Man 2, because there has certainly been a ton of it actually. There's a lot of the people in the community that love Venom, and there's a lot of people that hate Venom. So I want to talk about in this video why that is, good things about Venom, bad things about Venom, and also what you guys think of Venom. So in the comments below, first and foremost, leave a comment on what you think of Venom in Marvel Spider-Man 2. Now let's begin. So this person here says, I really enjoy Harry as Venom. While Eddie Brock is the definitive version of Venom for me, I like the different direction Insomniac went with this Venom. If y'all don't like it, just accept it and roll with it. Different adaptations, different portrayals. Besides, Eddie isn't the only host of Venom. And that is true. Insomniac has decided to do a different take on their Venom, and it makes sense that they tied it to Harry because of the way they ended the first game. It was a no-brainer that Harry was going to be Venom. Now, it is quite interesting how they ended up doing it, how they ended up going about it, but as you will see later down in this video, a lot of people just think that there wasn't enough time to see this Venom portrayal really just kind of get the shine, because Act 3 as a whole just felt incredibly rushed. Very, very rushed, you know? And that's something that I do agree with here. And then here's the other thing. Why wasn't Harry initially affected by the symbiote? So this is a post over on Reddit, like the Spider-Man PS4 Reddit. And it is a quite interesting thing, because when we first see Harry, he doesn't seem to be really affected by this, and a lot of people kind of found it weird. They thought that it was inconsistent, myself included, because I thought that maybe we were going to see Harry start kind of going a bit weird up until the transfer of the symbiote to Peter, because we knew that was going to happen somehow. And you could actually see during multiple points of the game, the symbiote actively tries to bond with Peter.
What are you... Hold on. Sorry. I'm still figuring out how this thing works.
Because you could sense that Peter would be the perfect host for it. And at that point, he was just looking for any excuse to leave Harry and bond with Peter, which was insane, right? So, you know, here's like comments from that post, right? Of people's theories as to why Harry wasn't affected, kind of squashing things. But it kind of sucks that we have to really sort of look into it ourselves than have it clearly communicated to us. Like, something that was clearly communicated to us with Venom was his weakness. They really made sure to communicate the fact that, you know, this symbiote was not weak to fire, was not really weak to electricity or anything like that. It was just sound. Sound was the only thing that would hurt it, especially when you go after Tombstone to go save him. You know, Harry goes straight through like he's up near this crazy furnace, then he jumps through this incredibly high level, high heat fire or whatever the hell was going on there, and he's just not affected at all. Like, he even says it, like, yeah, no, I'm not affected by heat, which is interesting and definitely makes the symbiote way more formidable and scarier than many others. But Sarcastic Kenobi here says, there's lots of theories. Some say that Peter's bad headspace was the catalyst, since he's being overwhelmed with the red tape of dealing with Aunt May's death, and the symbiote personified the old saying, you are what you eat. Some say the tank Norman had Harry and the symbiote in was much about muzzling the symbiote as it was about helping Harry, hence Connor's freaking out that the symbiote made a choice. It was awake and the tank was starting to wear off. Some say it was affecting Harry at some level. Harry talks about having conversations with his dead mum, which Miles takes as grief, but later we see the symbiote actually communicating with Harry as its mum, which is very true. So I think there's a lot of things here going on. Obviously, I think the symbiote's just as affected by the people that it latches onto as the people get infected by the symbiote, and it also has to do a lot with like substance abuse and addiction and things. And, you know, there's just a whole lot to do with the symbiote they can really look into, and I just wish we had so much more time to explore it, because Peter pretty much puts on the suit and he immediately starts going down this power trip, almost instantly, you know, beating down all the Craven guys. And, you know, I just wish we had some more personal time with the characters, because as soon as that bit happens, I feel like things start getting crazily rushed, you know? I think Harry's headspace when Peter got stabbed was the catalyst. That is true. He did start freaking out a bit, but some people hearsay that, you know, the symbiote wasn't completely sentient, but after being born with humans for so long it became sentient. I don't think that's true necessarily, but maybe it was the tank that was subduing the symbiote a lot, you know, which I could kind of agree with. But I think the symbiote was just evolving the longer it was being used, because you see Harry go from like slightly just, you know, being strong to the point of just like putting on the suit completely and mimicking Peter's like abilities. So the symbiote was just evolving as time went on and getting stronger, and I guess the influence was just getting stronger, right? But here's this person, it's Danny's issue. The issue I have with Venom is that they try to make him more like Null instead of Venom. And I can definitely see that. Like, Tony Todd did such an incredible job with voicing Venom and making him really menacing. But at the same time, it felt like Venom here had no real personality. Like, I couldn't tell if there was much of Harry coming through. If it was like a symbiosis, like, I don't know what the hell was going on at certain points with the character. But I don't necessarily hate that. But it all comes down to, I just wish we had more time. Because I think Venom's not even in the game for that long. I think like on-screen appearance wise, somebody said it's like 34 minutes or something, which is pretty crazy, like all things considered. And also we didn't even get that like set piece that they kind of advertised on the back of like a bunch of the materials for the game, where it's like Venom, Miles, and Peter kind of crashing through the city, you know? That would have been insane. There was just so much more potential with Venom, but I doubt that this is the last that we see of Venom. He'll probably be back in his own game and be more fleshed out, because I know that they're going to do something crazy with Null for sure. Now, somebody else said this. I said this in another thread, but I absolutely love the devil in your ear take they did with Venom. I love the idea that the symbiote has been sentient the entire time but doesn't truly interact with its host until it knows they're about to fall off the deep end, and then it feels your worst fears and insecurities to make you reliant on it. Venom is the drug dealer that gives you the product for free, knowing you're going to get hooked, and once you're hooked, then you have to pay. We saw this when Pete was really giving into his anger when Venom finally tells him to kill Kraven. One of my favorite, when Venom kills Kraven and turned back to Harry. He turned back into Harry and allowed him to visit his mom's grave, only to pull a semi-perfect cell and speak to Harry in his mom's voice to fully bring him on board, which is really crazy, isn't it? That was a really intense scene that was like, damn, so this symbiote's really manipulating him. There's some horror level stuff that showed Venom's manipulative monster, which made it even better by the fact that he's voiced by Tony Todd. 100%, I agree. And of course I'm going to show some positive things, because I'm also showing both sides, the hate and the love, you know? The fact that I had trouble telling who was actually speaking, Venom or Harry, in the end was awesome. And that's what I was saying earlier, like, it wasn't really clear who was really speaking. Was it Venom or was it Harry? Or were they, was it a complete symbiosis where their goals were aligned? Because for Harry, he was thinking he was healing the world, while Venom was just using that as an idea to just infect everyone due to this Null corruption. I feel like Venom was in that hive mind as well, and maybe anti-Venom actually cut him off from the hive mind, and maybe Venom was the only one that survives that initial hive mind purge alongside Carnage, which would actually be pretty interesting, because then we might see Venom maybe forming its own personality and showing that it's not exactly evil, but maybe not exactly good, which would be cool. Again, this would be something that would be really cool to explore in like Venom's own game. So edit, I'm loving going over the detail of what Venom has been doing in the background with you guys, because it's legitimately creepy when you think about it. Now I'm excited and kind of freaked out by Insomniac's future take of Carnage. Tony Todd and the writers nailed Venom's horror aspect, and Carnage was 100% worse. History-wise, with his bloodshed, Carnage should be Freddy Krueger's murderous in his debut. That is true. I'm really hoping that they nail Carnage as well, with like the horror and just the craziness, and I'm sure that they will. Now, Orixis here says, honestly really like this depiction, which seems to be an unpopular opinion on here, which is true. Like, the subreddit goes crazy. They either hate something, they love something, or both, depending on the day. They combined Venom from Web of Shadows and the symbiote from Spider's Shadow into one character and gave some connections to Null. My main criticism is that we barely get any time with Venom, even though he was heavily advertised. And again, that is true. Act 3 is like super rushed, because you know you have a ton of characters you gotta cover. You gotta cover Mary Jane, you gotta cover Peter, you gotta cover Miles' story, Mr. Negative, involve him in there, Harry, you know, trying to take over the world, constantly being able to get away. the whole anti-Venom subplot. There's just a ton of different things going on, and that's kind of where it got difficult with the amount of time that the game had for the story, like 17 hours. Because this game I platinumed really easy. It was probably the easiest Spider-Man game, like the easiest Spider-Man game to platinum to date, which means 100% complete. So, you know, not saying that that's a bad thing. Like, I don't want the game to be bloated with unnecessary content or anything, but I just think it could have benefited from more time. And I'm glad to see that a lot of people here agree. This is just a criticism for Insomniac. I'm not necessarily hating or anything like that, because I love Insomniac with all of my heart, man. They made so many good games that I absolutely cherish. So, you know, it's just constructive criticism, really. And Longhorse here says, I agree about Harry's turn. It felt rushed and it came out of nowhere. We've seen one small interaction with Peter and Norman, but it doesn't seem like enough. And I will add to this here. You do see Harry alongside certain parts, right? Like, but the way it feels when you go from mission to mission with Peter having the symbiote suit, that didn't feel like very long, right? It felt like maybe 2 days at most, if I'm being honest with you. And within 2 days, we see Harry deteriorate and get upset and get angry, like Peter's being this guy that's that's refusing to give him the suit, even though he was originally hunting down the lizard. But of course, at one point, you know, Harry's like, I need the suit back, and then Peter just like backs away, which is like the symbiote also reacting with Peter as well, because he doesn't want to go back to Harry. So you can go back and forth, but that should have been more fleshed out. There should have been more personal moments here, I feel like, rather than the small cutscenes that we get when Peter just kind of goes to Harry, or they hang out at the Emily May Foundation, which of course, you know, that being destroyed obviously gets to Harry, and that is understandable. Of course he's gonna be pissed, because that he wanted to heal the world, and now it's just like a huge blow. And Peter did kind of brush it off. He's like, what the hell? But, you know, it can always be rebuilt, so you know, it is what it is. So far he seemed like a normal dad, was friendly with his son's kid. Norman didn't even seem like he was rude or cruel to Harry. As far as he knows, he's a good father and gives him attention. And I mean, that is true. Norman was going crazy in the lab trying to find the cure. And it was just like, thank you for being there for Harry. And then he kind of like treats Peter like his own son, like, because he sees him as like a brother to Harry. And I can completely understand that. Like, Norman feels like he did all this crazy stuff to try to help his son, really, more than anything else. And it seems like it's going to be a pretty sad turn, I guess. Agreed, it felt like he was almost trying not to show the return of Harry's illness, or trying not to just show the return of Harry's illness, but also kind of mirror the paranoia and mental toll withdrawals can take for some addicts. That is true, because he did have the symbiote, and maybe he was like feeling that withdrawal, right? Like, we get a little of that with Peter referencing Harry's pills when he has the symbiote, and there's an undercurrent of doubt about Peter and desperation beyond merely getting sick again before that scene where he overhears Norman and Peter, or even the euphoria Harry initially experiences when he discovers his powers, starts experimenting, and then heroing. But that withdrawal parallel wasn't as clearly illustrated as the illness's return angle. That is true, so it got really overshadowed, because they keep waving the illness flag in our face. It muddies the addiction metaphor, and it can seem to come out of nowhere. Maybe it even feels like there's a couple of short lines of setup dialogue missing. And I would have appreciated one more reference to Harry popping pills to better set up first Peter mentioning that, and then Harry's withdrawals and heel turn for paranoia, because we see him all the time getting sicker, looking worse. It doesn't seem like he's really having those withdrawals. That was really nailed with Peter, and how like he was really struggling and he was really addicted to the suit, like he wasn't taking it off. But again, like I said, it all comes down to the amount of time. I feel like they could have used a bit more time with this, but that's okay, you know. I mean, it is what it is, right? It still is enough. If you're like a hardcore fan, you could just put all the dots together, like they have been here and in this video as well. But this is some of the things that people really hate about this Venom. Now, understandably, a lot of people were originally pissed, oh, Eddie Brock isn't Harry or whatever, like isn't Venom or whatever, why is Harry Venom? But that part isn't really like really justified as hate in my eyes. It's more so people just really wanting Venom to stay as how he was, which is understandable, but you know, it's a whole different iteration. And I'm more so looking at what people were like constructive criticism hating about Venom, if that makes sense, which is what this whole video is about. As much as people seem to like it, I thought the wings are goofy as hell, as is everything else connected to Null. I feel like the Venom arc needed an additional 2 to 3 hours and maybe an extra hour for Peter's symbiote arc. There's a lot of story in this game that feels like it needed more time. Everything up until Venom felt cohesive, but then we started rushing quite a bit, and it's unfortunate, which is very true. Again, the whole symbiote Peter part just really feels like we just kind of fly through it. It's a couple of missions and then boom, the symbiote suit's off. Then we get the Venom, and it just really ramps up, and the stakes just get higher and higher and higher. Anti-Venom feels like it wasn't strong enough to fight against Venom, even though like Martin Lee kind of just shrugs off all the symbiotes and even says multiple times that he's like the symbiotes don't like him because of his power, right? So I don't know. It's just strange how Venom wasn't really affected too much by that. Or maybe it was Peter's whole mind. Like, who knows? Peter got his ass handed to him, to be honest. But let's keep going. I loved it, but as many people, I think Act 3 was rushed and the game doesn't take enough time to develop the Spidey/Venom relation. And it's a shame because I really love that Venom needs Spidey to heal the world, like Harry needs Peter and the symbiote needs Spider-Man. Pretty good idea to bond Harry and Venom. But yeah, I wish there was more development, more missions. The whole act feels rushed, like the city becomes symbiotic with a cutscene. No precise context for the invasion, like the Queens of Brooklyn could have been a quarantine zone, and you could have a mission where the Spider-Man has to find the bridges to block the symbiotes coming from Manhattan. I'm gonna fight versus Venom in the entire city like an action chase, as seen in the CGI trailer and the concept art. Yeah, the game was a blast, especially Act 2 I think was a masterpiece, but something feels missing in the last part of the game, which, you know, I feel like that's what a lot of people really hate about Venom, is the lack of Venom, right? That's what I can really boil it down to. That's what people hate about Venom, the lack of Venom. Venom was perfect in this game. Tony Todd's voice was amazing. You know, I love Harry as Venom. I think there's a lot more that can be done with this character. I feel like because he's in a coma now, might be because the Venom symbiote within him is like recovering, because we know Venom's never really truly gone, right? Like, that's just the fact of the matter is, if they were talking about seeing a potential spin-off game with Venom, then why would they get rid of him? Like, there's just quite a few things they can do here, which are going to be really cool, and I'm really excited to see what happens. Maybe they could do like an opposite thing of what happened with like Cletus and Eddie Brock, where, you know, Eddie ends up like with Venom giving Carnage to, you know, Cletus by accident, like and maybe we can see a reversal of that where, you know, Cletus with Carnage gets drawn to like Harry and then ends up reviving the Venom within him, you know, bringing him back to life. Imagine if that's how it happens. But that'd be really cool, and a really cool teaser for like the next game that they could inevitably do. We don't know when the DLC is going to come out. It could be a year from now, you know, it could take some time, who knows, right? And this person here that deleted their account said, I don't know if it was rushed or people just expected more Venom. If we look at the actual story beats, we got plenty of Harry and Peter in Act 1. Heal the world motivation also was set up from the beginning for the third act to make sense. When Venom starts turning people into symbiotes, it works because it's been set up throughout the whole game, albeit in a more subtle way. It also helps that we see how aggressive the symbiote with manipulation is in Act 2, so Harry being manipulated makes total sense in Act 3. True, it does, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it was crazily conveyed, but then at the same time, like, we can just figure that out for ourselves anyway, so it could go either way with it. I just think it's rushed when you look at the Act 3 missions. I feel like there's less missions compared to the other acts. On the city is symbiotic, there's only symbiotes in the ground. No explanations or context for people not being here. Feels like there's a little lack of details in the third act. Understandable. And then a final photo / comment here that I will kind of end it off on is, I love Tony Todd's performance as Venom. I think his voice really makes him very menacing. However, I didn't like the direction they took the character in. Since the first game went into this post-apocalyptic tone for the final act, I was expecting something more personal. I also thought the boss fight could have been more epic, like that concept out of Venom chasing the two spiders across New York, which I will add makes sense. Especially, I feel like it could have really worked because of how instantaneous the fast travel was in this game. Like, you could instantly go to, like, load into a different side of the map. So I feel like having two Spider-Men chasing a Venom, kind of destroying the city, like kind of how it was with Lizard, when you were chasing him, I feel like that would have been very possible to see. I thought Venom's plan would be more personal, all about destroying Peter and Miles' life as revenge. Instead, Venom wants Peter to join him. What I dislike the most is that I always saw Venom as Peter's dark reflection. Here's just a Hulk-like monster with essentially the same plan as Web of Shadows, which is to terraform the world into symbiote wonderland. But then again, I can argue against that and say he just wants to heal the world, and he always wanted Peter on his side, and the symbiote wants Spider-Man, so that kind of aligns in that way. Even though Harry kind of hated him, but then the symbiote took over, I guess. You know, I don't know. It's a lot. All in all, I felt like giving Venom a world domination plot instead of killing Spider-Man was a huge mistake, and feels like they were trying to top the stakes of the first game when they could have made this a more small-scale and personal thing. I mean, they could have easily done that, and then they could have done the Venom invasion in the next game and dragged it out, but this is their vision at the end of the day, and I think they pulled it off just fine. My only issue, like everyone else says, the whole hate behind Venom, is that we didn't get to see enough of him. We probably will in a future game, but I feel like for what happened with that conflict, there could have been a lot more really cool little details. Like, one thing I will say here that I always was hoping that would happen in the game was, you know, picture this, it's nighttime in the game, you're swinging around, it's raining, and all of a sudden you just get ambushed by Venom, like no sort of warning, nothing like that, like a mini boss. You fight him off and boom, he just goes back into the world as you know, completing objectives. That would have been insane, because we didn't know where the hell Venom was the whole time. That would have been such a cool little addition. But it is what it is, man. I'm not really too fussed about it, but I want to hear your guys' opinion on this. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. I seriously appreciate every single one of you. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Peace.